All right, guys, we're going to get into our next segment of the night. And Jordan, I dubbed this segment Clemson After 2 Weeks. And what I want to do here is do a little bit forward facing for the Clemson Tigers. We've talked about, we've given our final thoughts on the App State game. We've talked about kind of how do we decipher the Georgia game versus the App State game? What is the real Clemson, right? Now we're going to do a little bit of forward facing instead of rear facing. And we're going to give our thoughts on what does Clemson look like the rest of the season, right? What can we expect from this version of Clemson football, the 2024 version going forward, right? How's it going to look? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing is, I mean, since we kind of decided, okay, well, the first two games, were what they were. Neither are completely representative of what this team is. And so, but I think the first thing is kind of reevaluating, the rest of your schedule. You've certainly had some teams. I think really more teams kind of falter as far as your perception of them than raise your perception of them. At least the teams that are on your remaining schedule. And I think, like, when you look at the ACC and the landscape of the ACC and the teams that you have coming up, obviously NC State, a team that we kind of thought was potentially an ACC contender. They have not looked like that, or through two games, and they certainly have had their struggles offensively, especially, but even defensively, I believe they've taken a big step back. And it's not just because Tennessee had a great day against them, but Western Carolina was moving the ball pretty consistently as well, and they just have not looked like themselves defensively. Like you've come to know NC State under Tony Gibson as defensive coordinator. They're going to run that 3-3-5. But they're going to be physical. They're going to show a lot of different looks. They're going to do a lot to confuse the quarterback. They're going to have really good linebacker play, good corners. You just haven't really seen that. And, losing a freak athlete like Peyton Wilson and some of the other ancillary pieces that they had last year, I think it was certainly a big deal. So NC State, obviously, definitely a game that doesn't look as daunting right now as it did, coming into the year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Florida State has taken the biggest drop in perception, starting 0-2 and not looking really impressive. And neither one of them were flukes. They got flat out outplayed in both games. Clearly, they were clearly the inferior team. Like it wasn't like, oh man, a kickoff return happened or they turned the ball over a couple of times. Like no, Georgia Tech moved the ball up and down on them, pushed them around on the lines of scrimmage. Boston College did the very same thing. And I mean, Memphis might be able to too this weekend. We'll see.
Right.
And so that game doesn't look as daunting. Stanford has certainly had their struggles. I mean, that wasn't a game I was super worried about, especially with them coming to the Valley, coming in. But they haven't done anything to change my mind there. Who else? I think Louisville has raised their stock a good bit. I think they've looked really impressive through 2 weeks, although they haven't really played a significant Power 4 opponent yet. They've looked good and they've taken care of business in both games. And I had some questions about them, with how much they lost from last year, and all how the transfers they brought in, Tyler Shuck at quarterback, with Jeff Brom kind of have another squad this year, but it appears, at least on paper, that he does. But yeah, I just think the schedule overall looks a little bit lighter. I think South Carolina has looked better. I really don't. They're kind of incomplete for me because, again, offensively, Lenora Sellers has, he's looked like a freshman or a first-year starter so far. That offense has not really produced a ton of, they've scored a little bit, but, that from a down-to-down basis, they haven't been very good, haven't been very explosive. or efficient. But defensively, they've certainly looked the part. So that's they're an interesting team. We'll see how they look against LSU. We'll learn more about them. Trying to think of who else is notable. Those were kind of the main ones I wanted to hit on. But yeah,
what do you think about that?
Yeah, Virginia Tech. Oh yeah, Virginia Tech stock down so far. The loss to Vanderbilt. That's ugly. You can't, if you're going to be an ACC contender, you can't lose to like Wake Forest when they went 5-7 or whatever last year beat Vanderbilt.
Right.
It's not good, man. That's not very good. And they did in Marshall. They looked okay against Marshall, but they didn't, dominate the game. And I think offensively, they're still kind of gelling. Virginia stock up.
Yeah.
At least a little bit. Tony Elliott is 2-0. Anthony Calandria, he threw for nearly 400 yards this past week in that win over Wake Forest.
Tony Elliott returning to the Valley.
Yeah. So like
interesting storylines heading into that game at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Miami stock up, but they're not on your schedule, not on your regular season schedule. So I mean, the ACC has
if you get a championship game.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, the ACC feels like a 2-team league.
Yeah.
Or maybe three. I'll throw Louisville in there because they've looked good. They were in the they deserve that credit. They were in the ACC championship last year. Until they prove that they're not, I'll keep them in that tier. So like, yeah. And again, you don't play Syracuse, who's looked good.
They've looked good, yep.
Which is nice. I'm not complaining about that. So, yeah, and you don't play Georgia Tech either. So, like, your ACC schedule has worked out really, really well. I mean, right now it feels like the toughest game by a significant margin is that Louisville game. But they they have to come to the Valley.
They do. They come to the Valley. So, yeah, it's looking, the schedule, when you look at it game by game, looks very manageable for the Tigers, right? There's a world where Clemson stands 11-1 at the end of the season with the singular loss being against Georgia in the season opener. So that's definitely in the cards. I think Clemson going forward, it looks promising, right? Now, can they keep this offense going forward? This offensive production up as we move forward throughout the season? That remains to be seen. But I definitely think this is going to be a different looking offense this year, right? To your point earlier in our last segment, I don't see very many 100-yard passing games for Cade Klubnik this season. So, with that said, Jordan, what has impressed you the most about this team through 2 weeks of the season?
I mean, I think it's going to start. I think most impressive. I mean, I think both lines of scrimmage, I think have impressed me the most. I mean, obviously, it's hard to say the defensive line has impressed me because I mean we felt pretty good about, especially your starting four. Like, we felt good that they could match up go toe to toe with anybody, and they've shown that through 2 weeks. But like your offensive line, we've talked about, just kind of the inconsistencies and the struggles from last year, and how having all that returning production was great, but we have not really seen them play well very often. And so, I mean, they've been ready to go in both weeks. I mean, say what you want about that Georgia game. I thought they played about as well as you could have asked them to. You could have run block better, but it's hard to. Georgia is just some of that. Sometimes, like, a team is just more talented than you, and that was kind of the case there. But they rose to the occasion, and I didn't feel like they got beat up physically, which is we've seen Clemson's offensive line get beat up physically and by lesser teams than the number one team in the country. So
absolutely,
offensive line has been extremely impressive. They have not, according to Clemson's grading system, they have not given up a sack through 2 games. So they've given up 2 sacks. The team has given up 2 sacks, but those were credited to the quarterback and not the offensive line. So offensive line, I'll give offensive line the number one because they were the ones with the most questions. We expected the defensive line to be good. Uh, who else? Tight ends. I've been really pleased with the tight end play. Obviously, Jake Brenningstool has been the big pass catching weapon, but you've seen the depth, and you see you have some options, some quality options behind him. Josh Sapp, he's gotten out there. I mean, he made a catch, a really nice catch on Saturday. Hope to see him more involved, but Austin Pat Henry stock way up. Think he's a guy that has to play more. Fantastic blocker, just gives a extreme effort, and obviously I love his upside as a pass catcher as well. So and Jake, to his credit, as John Sarian says in the chat, his blocking has been a lot better, and that's something we've been trying to get out of him for 3 years. But he's never going to be a great blocker, but you definitely see the effort, and he's being an effective blocker. So I think that's about all you can ask for with a guy of his size and athletic profile. So yeah, tight end room, really happy with that. Who else? I already mentioned the defensive line. I think the corners, the young corners have been hit or miss, but I've been impressed by a couple of guys. And Avion Terrell, we knew was going to be really, really good. And Shelton Lewis was obviously hurt in the first game. He almost got a pick six on Saturday. Like, I think that's kind of still gelling a little bit, and I think that secondary as a whole will grow. RJ Mickens been really, really good at safety. I think he just continues to be quietly one of your best players. He's been like one of the most thankless. He's gotten like the least amount of thanks of about any of your experienced guys. Like, he just continues to be extremely solid on the back end. Really, really effective tackler. Just everything you want in a safety. He's not a high end NFL talent, but he does his job and he's in the right spot. Way more often than not. So. Yeah, RJ Mickens, and then of course your young wide receiver room. I think that's got to be there as well. Your freshmen have looked as advertised when they've gotten to play their 2 games. I've been really happy with them. So that's been those are kind of my going through the whole team. Those are the guys that really stood out. Backup running back. I think Jay Haynes and David Ajumame, they flashed a good bit on Saturday. Good to see.
Yep.
Mainly. And I guess I'm impressed with some of the walk-on play. Between Levi Matthews getting that athletic interception off the tip, and Peter Nern recovering a fumble on kick. That was funny. That was good. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and how could I forget Christopher Vizina? So
Absolutely.
I thought he impressed on Saturday.
Yeah, I think all of that, most notably for me, is that offensive line. The transformation of that offensive line to, as of right now, where we are in the season, is much better than I thought it would be. I thought they would improve, obviously. With the hire of Matt Luke, I thought he would get a lot more out of them this season than we got out of them last season. But I did not think it would be this much improved at this point in time in the season. Again, long season ahead, got to stay healthy at that position. But you got to love what you see from the offensive line. I think by far they have won for me, the most impressive thing of the team so far this season is definitely that offensive line. Shifting gears to the most disappointing thing that you've seen from Clemson so far this season. It could be a position group, particular player? You can go anywhere with this, but what has been the most disappointing thing about Clemson so far this season for you through 2 games?
Disappointing. Yeah, I think the linebacker play has still been kind of
That's exactly where I was going to
hit or
go.
miss. Yeah, it's been hit or miss. I mean, even from your 2 starters, I want to see more. I mean, I thought they cleaned up some stuff on Saturday, but need to develop some consistency there. And obviously, your depth is being tested now, so got to get more quality play out of them. And obviously, a couple of your older receivers that we've talked about. I think they corrected some of their mistakes on Saturday, but obviously, it's hard to get that first game against Georgia out of your mind. I can't say I've been disappointed with anything. And again, it's through 2 games, so
Yeah.
still kind of new. I've been disappointed. This isn't like a particular position group, but I've been disappointed with with third down defense through 2 weeks. Like I feel like they,
Yeah.
especially on third and long, like you've given up way more third and longs than you should.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
think
third and
I
14, third and
remember
15.
like a 3rd and 17 against Georgia. I mean,
Yeah,
come on, man. Like I know it's Georgia, but like you you can't allow them to convert that.
yeah,
You just can't. You get killed. If you can't get off the field at 3rd and 17 or 3rd and 15, like what are we doing? But I was going to go exactly where you went. And I'm not saying our linebackers have been, horrible or bad this season or anything like that. But if I'm being honest, they've been disappointing because of the level that I thought they would be playing at this season,
yeah,
because of who we have returning. Right. I just expected a little bit more, and maybe we get that as the season goes on. But through 2 games, I think the linebackers have been a little disappointing. I think they could play better, specifically in that Georgia game. We talked about it, the bad angles that they took, the missed tackles, just the, getting lost in coverage sometimes. Um, and, to your point, they did clean it up against App State a bit. They didn't get to play very much, so there is that. But I want to see a little bit more consistency, especially out of a linebacker group that's as seasoned as those 2 guys are, right? You just expect a certain level of consistency, and we just haven't gotten it to this point this season. Again, a lot of games left to play, a lot of season ahead, and they may be the strength of the defense by season's end. They certainly have the talent and the capability to do that. But through 2 games, they've been a bit disappointing for me.
yeah.
No, we're not questioning Wes Goodwin, Jay. We're not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like it's his position group, so I mean, ultimately, it's on him to get more out of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not like, hey, just fix it.
Yeah, just fix it.
That's ultimately what it's going to be. But yeah, they got to be better. It's again, you're playing Georgia. You're going to get exposed a little bit. They're just it's the number 1 team in the country. They have weapons, but I just think some of the little stuff, some like being physical, attacking, and as far as your tackles are concerned, it felt like they've played soft through 2 weeks. It's like they just have not been as like it's like okay if you make the wrong read, like okay, you can coach that, you can fix that, but I can't make you I can't make you play with the physicality necessary at that position. And you just too many missed tackles and just too many being kind of tentative at the point of attack, and you just that has to be better. So
yeah, absolutely. Certainly has to be better, and you expect more out of a position group that has that many snaps under their belt and that much experience. So hopefully they get it together as the year goes on and becomes far more consistent and more closer to the version of the linebacker group that we thought they would be. I mean, it's been said that they could be one of the best linebacker groups in the country this year. They have not looked anything close to that so far this season. So They got to get it together and get there because this defense will need them as the season goes forward. All right, one more thing before we turn the page from this particular segment, Jordan. What worries you going forward for these Clemson Tigers?
Yeah, worries. Man, well, I've already talked about, your linebackers already aren't playing well, and the depth is getting tested. So, that's a slight concern. I think, we still have not seen anybody truly emerge, in the depth of that defensive end room. Like we've seen a bunch of guys in the defensive tackle room, make plays. Obviously, between Demonte Capehart, Peyton Page. We've made plays. Trey Williams, Vic Burley, Stephylan Green. Like, you have dudes there, but like we defensive end kind of feels like we still are kind of waiting for somebody to truly flash. We haven't really seen much from Jaheim Lawson. Cade Denhoff has been solid in the run game, but hasn't really been an really effective pass rusher. And obviously the guys behind him have hardly seen the field. I mean, AJ Hoffler, again, I'm going to keep banging the drum for him to get more snaps, but I'm not there in practice every day, so I don't know what he is and isn't doing. But you need to see some depth emerge there, and that's especially with Peter Woods, potentially being out. Got to have somebody there because teams are gonna, especially with the Georgia tape, they've seen you get attacked on the edge, and that's going to be what a lot of teams are going to exploit or are going to attempt to exploit moving forward. So you got to have quality play there. And of course, that also bleeds into the linebacker play, but it all goes hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely. What worries me going forward for Clemson, I think, is one, kind of similar to what you were talking about, the lack of QB pressure, right? The lack of getting home with the pass rush. DJ Parker was kind of that dude last year, hasn't really made that level of impact so far this season. So we need a guy that can go out there and really pin their ears back and rush the quarterback when we need it, right? I don't think we're getting as much pressure as we're typically used to seeing for a Clemson defense, and we're certainly not getting home very often. So I think that worries me going forward. The other thing that worries me is the depth of this team. I think we are thinner than we would like to admit at several position groups. And that worries me going forward, just because of the attrition of college football and injuries, and we've already seen it through 2 weeks of the season, losing a huge rotational piece at the linebacker position and Kobe McLeod. We're thin at cornerback, at least as far as proven guys
that you could trust to go out there and play right now.
You can truly trust to go out there and play like.
I mean, you saw Brandon Strozier and Corin Gibson get out there, and they had some Tavoy Fegan. Like
it was rough at times.
Kind of yeah.
So definitely there. You already mentioned the defensive end position. You got Peter Woods already banged up. We're thin there. We need guys to start stepping up. Cade Denhoff, that dude's got to step up, man. And I know he's been playing a lot, but like we got to feel his presence out there, right? Hoffler, Jaheim Lawson, like pass rush specialist, right? Like we need to see it.
Yeah. Because I mean, listen, the Georgia game, the snaps I saw Jaheim Lawson, he was a non-fat, like he was getting neutralized. It was not good. So I'm like, he's already undersized. So like, I mean, he's not going to offer you a ton of help in the run game. So like, if he's not winning, if he's not winning in pass rush situations, then why, what, I mean, like I like him a lot, but like, you can't just keep trotting him out there and he's not giving you anything because, so, yeah.
So yeah, that's just a few things. The ability to consistently rush the passer is a worry for me. The depth at cornerback is a worry for me. And I could say the same about the offensive line. As impressed as I've been about the offensive line, I don't trust the depth.
Yeah, I don't trust the depth right now.
I know they say they got 8 dudes, but no, they don't.
Yeah,
not like those first 5 dudes. They don't.
Maybe like Sadler when he's on point. Like okay, okay, you have a 6th guy, but I don't trust it. Like if injuries pile up, yeah,
I think it really stops there. That group has got to stay healthy. So those are just kind of my worries going forward. But we'll see how it plays out. It's a long season. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be peaks and valleys. Injuries are a part of the game, and we just hope that we can weather the storm, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, last and I did want to point this out because I meant to get to him, but I completely forgot. DJ mentions Khalil Barnes. Yeah, he's underwhelmed too. He's got to be better. He was totally lost in he had a rough Georgia game. I mean, he didn't play a ton on Saturday. Beyond the first quarter. So
let's not have that sophomore slump.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot to clean up. So definitely, I mean, hey, listen, these players aren't even ones that are freshman All-Americans, but yeah, he's got to fix it. He's got to be better because he has not been as effective as he was last year by any means.
Yeah, absolutely.